Hello and welcome to the Masonic Authors Guild International. This is Robert L.D. Cooper with Mark A. Tabbert. We are MAGI. Our mission is to promote the highest standards in education, research and publications relating to the global phenomenon of Freemasonry.
Defining Freemason: Compromise, Pragmatism, and German Lodge Members in the NSDAP by Dr. Christopher Thomas. Published in German Studies Review, October 2012, Volume 35, Number 3, pages 587 to 605. Forgiveness is asked by the reader for mispronunciation of German, English, or other words. Abstract. The Nazi persecution of Freemasons presented a conundrum. Freemasonry was condemned by party ideology, but individual Freemasons possessed skills as professionals that were essential to the success of the regime. What would have otherwise been a mutually beneficial relationship sought after by both parties was prevented solely by the fact that these professionals were Freemasons. The process of negotiation and accommodation, as the party continually redefined what it meant to be a Freemason, in an attempt to find a way to balance ideological purity and practical necessity, reveals the ad hoc nature of the Nazi government. In abstract. Freemasonry and Nazis are two of the most popular subjects in popular and academic literature. Yet exploration of where the two intersect beyond esoteric connections and intellectual roots have received little attention. Since the end of World War II, articles and books have concentrated on persecution of and resistance by Freemasons. Then in the late 1990s, researchers began challenging the picture of Freemasons as wholly victims, finding that they often showed complacency and even willing cooperation with the regime. But in addition to creating a victim/collaborator tug of war, this discrepancy says something about pragmatism, compromise, agency, and the ability of officials to act outside of established policy in the Third Reich, as well as how men who belong to a targeted group could end up serving in some of the regime's highest offices. German Freemasonry had a long history of ties to government. After arriving in Hamburg in 1737, Freemasonry quickly spread through other port cities when Frederick the Great joined. After Frederick, all but two of Prussia's kings joined the lodges, providing two reasons why so many of Prussia's aristocracy joined: exclusivity and royal patronage. The French Revolution, Bismarck's turn against the National Liberal Party, and the refusal of Wilhelm II to enter the lodges largely ended aristocratic membership and royal patronage, leaving the majority of members from the educated Bürgertum, who remained politically conservative nonetheless. By 1930, most Freemasons came from the demographic that increasingly supported the Nazis through the Weimar and into the 1930s, as well as serving in those professions that voluntarily and willingly, quote, worked towards the Fuhrer, unquote. Despite all this, the Nazi Party, from its earliest days, numbered Freemasonry among its enemies due to the fraternity's internationalism, its egalitarian and tolerant ideology, its ties to Jewish history, that is, Masonic myth claims the fraternity originated at the building of King Solomon's Temple, and its esotericism, which is ironic considering the close connections between Weimar esoteric clubs and Nazi ideology. Many pillars of the early Nazi Party were former members of the Aristophysicist groups like the Germanonium and the Thule Society. Even Hitler, though never a member of either, once remarked that the party ought to copy the hierarchy and order of the Masonic lodges, if not their ideology. After the seizure of power, when scores of former Freemasons sought admission to the party and its auxiliaries, the Nazis stood at an impasse. These were men whose skills, such as administrative, legal, business, and medical knowledge, were essential to the success of the regime. But on the other hand, these men belonged to a proscribed organization, even though most had joined for social and professional reasons, something even Hitler admitted. After all, joiners' culture was a significant part of bourgeois professionalism, and most Freemasons belonged to many professional and social organizations. There were Masons, however, like symbolic Grand Lodge Grand Master Leo Wufelmann, who demonstrated that some lodge brethren truly believed in Masonic ideology. The regime could make allowances for social joiners, but it dreaded accidentally letting in men like Wuffermann. To ban all former Freemasons was foolish, but to admit all applicants would be equally so. The party needed a balance, which came in codifying what separated quote-unquote true Freemasons, like Wuffermann, from the social joiners. But time and again the party established limits of acceptable, only to redefine those limits a year or two later, making them more exclusive. In less than a decade, the party went from a total ban on Freemasons in the party, civil service, and the military to granting amnesty to the majority of former Freemasons. Although the matter did not come to a head until the 1930s, the issue of Freemasons in the party had started in the 1920s. In 1926, Hitler established what became the Reichsuntersuchungen und Schlichtung Ausschüsse, that is, Reich Committee for Investigation and Settlement, or Ruschla, to settle internal party disputes. Two of the issues that Ruschla had to address were the admission of former Freemasons as new members and the continued membership of Freemasons already in the party. By the early 1930s, the Ruschla urged a total ban, although allowing Hitler to grant exceptions. The Volksheit Beobachter echoed the ban in 1933 article titled No Freemasons in the NSDAP. As for the exceptions, Hitler granted those in, quote, very rare cases, unquote, to, quote, men whose entire lives bear witness to their indisputable nationalist feelings, unquote. Policy was easier to announce than enforce, however, and enforcement varied by region. Some local offices began either admitting ex-Masons or refusing to throw out former lodge members already in the party, while others strictly adhered to the policy. Those Freemasons who were denied admission appealed on the grounds that if other Freemasons were allowed to remain, why should they be excluded? Walter Buch, head of the Ruschla, pointed out the paradox in a Ruschla newsletter. Buch acknowledged that the policy of banning all Freemasons, but argued that the acceptable of quote-unquote honorable Germans who formerly belonged to the lodge and had forsaken lodge membership was quote-unquote unrefusable. But what defined honorable? This podcast is for educational purposes and perhaps entertainment. While the Masonic Authors Guild International provides the most accurate information possible, listeners use the information at their own risk. This podcast and its contents are MAGI's and Professor Christopher Thomas's property, as are all the opinions and information it presents. Professor Christopher Thomas's, Robert L.D. Cooper's, and Mark A. Tabbert's views and opinions within the podcast do not represent nor speak for Freemasonry, any Masonic organization, their former or current employers in any way, shape, or form. MAGI, Thomas, Cooper, or Tabbert will not compensate you in any way whatsoever if you ever happen to suffer an inconvenience due to the information herein contained.